Hey everyone, it's Vanessa Johnson with the Machine Knitting Beginners Circle Group. And today I am attempting to knit a sock. Now I have knit socks before, so I'm not new to sock knitting. And there are a variety of different ways to knit socks, depending on your machine and the accessories that you have with your machine. What I'm going to be doing today is knitting a sock on a single bed machine. And I am using my Knit King AM3, also known as the Knitax AM3. The beauty of this machine is that it does not require any weights. So we won't have to use these, or I won't have to use these when knitting the socks. Now when you do knit a sock or anything where you have to use short rowing, that's when you have to put needles into hold, and then you're knitting in some areas and not knitting the needles in hold. What that does is creates a longer fabric in the area where you're knitting, while the fabric underneath those needles in hold stays still. And that creates a pocket. That pocket will end up being a heel or a toe on the sock. So usually you'll have to hang your weights in that section. Just making sure that this is on camera, and it's not on camera. Oh, there we go. So you normally have to hang your weights in that little pocket that you create. Well, on this machine, you don't need to do that because these little sinkers right here, they go up and down, they actually grip the knitting from underneath and hold it in place, so no weights are necessary. So I'm going to be cheating a little bit today just to make it easier for me to do the video. And for you guys, if you have a machine that does require weights, which most machines do, then just make sure you have a couple of weights, claw weights available. All right, so I'm making a sock. I don't know who it's going to fit. I'm just going to be using a pattern that I have in my head. It's my basic pattern for knitting socks. And basically, when you start, you always want to have a number of needles that when you split it in half, if you divide it in two, each half is going to be divisible by 3. So what do I mean by that? So right here on my bed, I am starting from 20 to 20. So you would normally think that's 40 needles, but actually on my machine, 0 has a needle in it. So that's really 41. The reason we want to start with 41 is if you cut 41 in half, divide it by 2, that gives us 21. I'm sorry, it doesn't give us 21. If we did it by 42, that would give us 21 on each side. 21 is divisible by 3. 7 times 3 is 21. And the reason we want to do that is if we have our 21 needles, let's say, and hold on one side, okay? On the other side, as we're knitting, we're going to be putting a needle in work, putting a needle in work, putting a needle in work, or out of work rather, all the way down until we get to 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Here would also be 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Here would be 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's why I kind of like to do a number that when you're working on half those needles, it's divisible by 3. That one-third section is going to be the point of the toe or the point of the heel. Then after we've done that decrease, we're going to go back and increase on each side. Keep going back, back. Until everything's in working position. Push these into work. On my machine, these needles and hold don't go back into work by themselves, so I have to push them, and then we knit all the way across. So that is the reason I like to use a number that is going to be divisible by 3, if that makes sense, okay? When you split it in half. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is cast on, and again, we're going to be working with 42 stitches. So it can be, on your machine, it might be 21 and 21, 21 on the left, 21 on the right. Because my machine has 0 as a stitch, I'm doing 20 to 21, which actually would be 42 needles. Make sense? hopefully. Stay with me. All right, another thing. On my machine, I don't really have to E-wrap, but we're going to do the E-wrap here. And E-wrap starts on the side opposite the carriage. My carriage is here. We're going to start on the opposite side of the carriage, which is here. And what we're going to do is we're going to E-wrap. So we're going to come up between the first and second needle. We're going to wrap around. We're going to go under. On my machine, I have to catch these little hooks right here underneath. Then we're going to go between the next set of needles, under. And so we're basically creating an E. If we were doing a cursive writing, that would be an E. We're going to go between the two, back, and keep going forward. Between the next two, back, all the way across the machine. And you kind of get into a little rhythm with it. If you can, that's great. If not, continue to take your time. No rush. And for those of you who who find yourself moving ahead quicker, you can go ahead and fast forward this video. I'm just going to continue to E-wrap on video. Also, the type of yarn you should be using, I guess I should have said that. I'm using a sock yarn. And so any fingering weight yarn is fine. We're not knitting to gauge or anything right now. We're just practicing the process of making a sock. The nice thing about making a sock, it'll probably fit someone. If you make it too big for you, give it to someone else. Make it too small, give it to someone else. It's not wasted because we're learning a skill, right? All right, so I am done with that. Okay, so I've gone ahead and I've E-wrapped all the way across, and I'm just checking to make sure that all my yarns are underneath these little sinker posts here. They can be a little bit of a pain on the first row, but that's okay. They make up for it in the fact that I don't have to use weights. And if you hear me pause, it's because I keep looking around on the other side of my phone at the screen so I can make sure that I am in frame. And my chair is squeaking. Okay, so we have all the needles E-wrapped. And what we're going to do is we are going to knit. The part we're knitting now is going to be the ankle. I'm not making a very tall sock. I'm making just a short sock so you can get the idea of the process of knitting a sock. And then once you get used to it, then you can kind of develop a pattern for making taller socks and increasing tension or adding more needles or decreasing to get a better fit. Okay, so what I think I'm going to do is I think I'm going to knit 30 rows for the ankle. Okay, actually I'm going to knit probably 15 rows. Let me just change my counter back to 0. Okay, and as you can see, like I said, on my machine, it's a little bit different. You'll see as I pass by that my yarn is in a carrier attached to the carriage. It's a funky little machine. It doesn't quite work like a regular Japanese model machine, but no worries. This pattern is translated to any machine. All right, so let's knit 15 rows. Whoops. Okay, I messed that up because remember I said on my machine my needles do not knit back from hold, so I have to push them in. So that's why nothing happens. So make sure you have your machine set up where it will not knit needles in hold. Okay, and the reason for that is we're going to be working in hold, and I don't want you guys to forget to switch. So have it set so it's not going to knit the needles in hold, okay? And everything just slipped out here. Hopefully it knits. Let's see. Yep, there we go. That's our first row. That's 1, change these numbers back. My whole bed slid. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay. Move my bed around. Sorry about that. My machine actually does not clip down. It's supposed to have these little non-slip pads underneath, but they still slip. Making sure I'm back in frame. Okay, good. All right, so that's 15. And we've got this little piece of knitting here on the edge. At this point, you should know how to cast on your machine if you're making socks at least. You may need to hang some weights. Again, I don't need to hang weights, but this would be a good time for you guys to make sure your weights are set up. I'm doing what's called a picot hem, and that means that what we're going to do now is we're going to take the second stitch off of every needle and we're going to transfer it over. So, actually, no, I'm sorry. I'm not going to do picot because this machine, everything is grabbed up and held right here. I have to undo that in order to move a stitch. So I'm just not going to bother with that. We're just going to hang a hem. How about that? Let's just hang the hem. So your first row that you did, you're going to go ahead and you're going to find the first loop. Okay. And again, this is just practice. Doesn't have to be perfect. You take your first little loop and we're going to hang it on the needle. Okay, and then we're going to do that all the way across. I like to hang my first and last one. Okay, and just you can take both loops or a single loop, it's up to you. I think I'm just going to take the single loop and hang it all the way across. This is going to be our hung hem for the top of the sock. And again, I apologize. This video is a little bit all over the place, but it was a kind of a last minute decision to get it done. So I guess I'm not really in the right frame of mind right now, but hopefully you learn something from it. Because it's real time, we're learning as we go. You'll see all of my mistakes, and hopefully you won't repeat them. So I had a stitch there that came loose. So I'm just going to tighten that stitch, knit that back, boom. So I got a little bit of stitching here that has come undone, and that's okay. We're still going to hang our hem. I'm just going to correct it as I go. You just continue to hang yours all the way across. Don't worry about me. I'll fix mine afterwards. Keep hanging every loop. Now I own a number of different knitting machines, but excuse me, I'm not a very good knitter. I'm kind of learning as I go, like a lot of you guys. I enjoy the process. I don't always make garments. I'm not even a big fan of garments. I like to do picture knitting and intarsia and Fair Isle, and I knit for the relaxation more so than a project, but I like to learn about the machines, and I figure the more I learn about them, maybe the more I'll start knitting garments and things that everyone else seems to knit. But I just like the fabric, and sometimes I use the fabric in different art pieces, or I don't know. Sometimes I just knit and create the fabrics and put them up. I have a box full of my little samples, and I know I'm going to use them in a project one day. So I keep them. So whatever reason you're knitting for, just keep doing it. Keep knitting. There's no wrong way to knit, in my opinion. You just do what feels good for you. Don't worry about your mistakes. I think gone are the days of everything has to be perfect. I mean, it is knitting using machine, but look at how much hand usage it requires. You know, it may not be 2 needles. You know, we're not knitting in that fashion, but it's very, very hands-on when you machine knit. So I don't believe in acting like we're cheating just because we're machine knitting. It's way, way involved. Almost as involved as hand knitting. Maybe even more because of all the extra bits that we have to do to achieve our knitting. Alright, hopefully you're almost done, or you're done waiting on me, but I've got one last stitch to pick up, and I'll find one in here. Again, this doesn't matter if it's perfect or not, just get them on the needle. That's all you really got to do. Okay, so I can't push mine all the way out to hold and keep it there because my machine doesn't knit back from hold, so I'm just going to straighten them up and then push them back a little bit. Okay, so that was 15, and then we hung our hem, and now let's knit 30 rows and see if we like the length that we get. Okay, I'm going to loosen up my tension a little bit. I had mine set on 3, but I'm using a fairly thick yarn, and my gauge machine is actually 5.08 millimeters. It's not a standard gauge machine, which is 4.5. It's 5.08. So I'm going to increase my tension a little bit. All right, and let's do 30 rows and see what we like. 1, 2. All right, that is 30 rows, and here's what we have. Now I missed some stitches here. Don't worry about that. I'm going to unravel this. But now you can see we have a nice hem, and we have our ankle. Really love this yarn. It's so pretty. Let me make sure you guys can see that. Yep. We have a nice little hem, which is here, folded over, and then we have our ankle. So at this point, I'm going to start to create our heel. Okay, this is going to be a really short sock, but the heel is going to start right now. If you want, you can add a few more rows to make the ankle piece as long as you want, but I'm ready to start my heel now. Okay, now, as I mentioned, in order to start the heel, you're going to start it on the opposite side of where your carriage is, and you're going to take half of the needles. Okay, so for me, it's going to be 21. So I'm going to start from here because I have 0 through, actually from 0 through 20, it leaves me 21. So that means on this side of 0, it's going to leave me 21 because I had 42. So this side, opposite the carriage, not the same side as the carriage, but the opposite side of the carriage, half of those needles, whatever number you chose, is going to be in hold position. Okay. Now, I'm going to do let's see. What we're gonna do on this side, this is the time to get your weight ready, because we're gonna start creating that pocket, and it's gonna be right about here in the center, and that means you're gonna need to put a weight on it. On my machine, I don't need that, but you'll start seeing a pocket form here, okay? So first thing we're going to do is we are going to put one needle and hold. Let's see, I'm put the needle and hold here on the same side as the carriage, because I'm going to be doing automatic wrapping. So this needle goes into hold, and we knit across. Make sure before you knit that your carriage does not knit needles back if they're in hold position. Whatever that setting is on your machine, hold position, you want to make sure you enable it so it doesn't knit the needles back. Okay? And we go across. Okay, and then next needle, go across. And then make sure this is going to wrap. There we go. Next needle, go across. Next needle, go across. Next needle, and across, and we are decreasing. You should be seeing that pocket forming. You see it? See right in here? Okay, there's a pocket forming right here. Okay, so if you have a machine that requires weights, you want to make sure you're hanging that weight right in there to pull down on that section. Okay, I don't need a weight, but I'm just going to leave this here for you guys to see. Okay, all right. Looks like I pulled out a needle. 1, 21, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 on this side, 1, 2, 3, 4 on that side. I think I'm supposed to just knit across now. I forget. Yeah. I might have messed that up, but it's okay. And we're going to go down to 7 needles. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now we have 7 needles, right? Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to increase. So that means we're putting a needle back into work. And then back into work. Don't pull it too far back. You don't want to drop a stitch. Back into work. 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 Back. 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 Oops. Machine sliding around. And back. Now that's the last needle that's going back into work, because remember we started with 0 over. So now everything is going to knit. We've just finished our heel. I'm going to take my weight off. You guys got to keep your weights on, okay? Don't forget. Keep your weight on here. You can see that nice heel, nice deep heel pocket. Look at that. Beautiful. Making sure you guys can see that, okay? So you want to make sure you have your weights here on the edge. Also, you have your weights underneath the needles and hold, because now, after we finish this part, which is the heel, because we have our ankle, then our heel, now we're going to start to knit the foot, okay? So, all needles should be back into work. Again, on my machine, I have to push them back from hold position. On your machine, you should be turning off whatever switch that you had turned on that allowed you to knit without knitting those needles in hold, because now you want to knit the needles in hold, okay? So now we're going to decide how many rows we're going to do for the foot. I'm just going to go ahead and do 40 right now and see how that looks. And you do whatever you think you need to do, 30, 40, depending on who you're making the sock for, okay? Or if you have a pattern that you're following. That's 39. I'm going to do 41. 40, and now 41. Here's the reason I'm doing 41. I want the carriage on the opposite side that it was last time. And the reason for that is I like to do my heel on the opposite side of where I did my toe. So my toe on the opposite side of where I did my heel. So here's my heel. And I'm going to do my toe on this side. Because it all depends on where you want the seam to be. So there's the heel. We did 40 rows. Now I'm going to do the toe. So that means this side now has to go into hold position. Okay. So make sure that you're changing the setting on your carriage so that it will not knit needles in hold position. Okay. And just want to make sure you guys can still see what I'm doing. All right. So we're going to do the same thing. On the side where the carriage is, we're going to pull out our first needle into hold position, and we're going to knit across. Next needle, knit across. This is called automatic wrapping. We're going to keep going until we have 7 needles left. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, 7 needles left. Now we're going to increase, putting these needles back in work. Almost done. Once I do this and go across, I'll have no more needles to knit back to. So I'm just going to do this one at the same time because we're pretty much done. So put all the needles into work. And now we're going to knit 1 row with all the needles. Oh, make sure you change your carriage so that it will now knit all the needles in hold position. There we go. So this is basically our sock. So what I'm going to do is get a little waste yarn, and I'm going to take this off on waste yarn. Now I'm not going to cut my yarn because I plan on unraveling all of this and actually making a sock to fit me. So I don't want to have a knot in it. So I'm just going to take my yarn out, sit on my lap, and get another piece of yarn to use as my waste yarn. Something that's not all tangled up. Let's see what I got here. 1 second. My yarn is close in color to this one because this yarn has so many colors in it that I don't want to use something that's going to confuse me when I take it off the machine. So just give me a second. I'm looking for a yarn that just won't match anything that's on there now. All right, so also another nice thing with this machine is I don't have to put the yarn in the carrier. I can lay it over the needles and knit. So this way I don't have to cut my yarn. And that should be it. Okay, so cut this yarn. Now when I go across, it should just drop off. Okay, let's look at what we have. Again, I just want to make sure I stay in frame. So here we have the ankle, and the toe, seam on the bottom. So when you do your heel and toe on opposite sides of the carriage, you get a seam on the bottom, and I like the seam on the bottom. Now if I did the heel and toe on the same side, then the toe would be here and wrap up and the seam would be on the top. Hopefully that makes sense. So I did a seam on the bottom. But as you can see, this is a little child sock. Okay. Maybe you can see it better that way. Just checking to make sure everything's in frame. I'm going to zoom back out. Oops, sorry. Okay, so it's a child sock. There's a toe. This is waste yarn. Remember, don't look at that. That's just waste yarn. That just holds those live stitches for us so that we can Kitchener or seam the toe close. I'm getting caught up on all of this yarn. I mean needles right here. Hang on a second. Okay. And as you see, this is this area where we would be doing the seaming to close all that up. Toe would be there. Boom. You can see that. That's where the toe would be. Okay, I'm just making sure you guys can see all that. And that would be your sock, basically. It would look like that. Now, of course, if you're going to make a sock for someone else with bigger feet, you'll use more needles. You'll knit the foot longer. You might want to knit the ankle higher. You might want to make more stitches across on the bed so that your heel is wider, your toe is wider. But with the sock yarn that I used and the number of needles that I use, that is for a child's sock. And I would say the sock would probably fit maybe a, I don't know, 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 4-year-old maybe, 3 or 4. But that is it. That is pretty much the basics on how to knit a sock. I didn't go into a lot of detail because there's just so many sock patterns out there. I just want you to get the idea of what a sock would look like on the machine and how to do the heel and the toe. It's not exactly the same. Some people do variations, but for the most part, you can do it exactly the same as this toe. And you're going to get a sock. You know, now you just, once you get the hang of it, you just play around with the heel. Make it wider, shorter, do ribbing for the leg or the ankle. You may decide to set up your double end machine with your ribber on it, and you're going to do your ribbing first. Then you're going to transfer the ribber stitches back to the main bed, drop the ribber down. Then you're going to start on your heel the same way we did. So instead of hanging a hem like this, you have two beds, just rib. Do your ribbing first. Transfer those needles from the ribber back to the main bed. Start your heel, same way we did ours. Do your foot, or some people like to start the heel and then they will put the ribber back up and do circular knitting for the whole foot. So the whole foot is a circle, you won't have to seam it. Then they transfer the stitches and do the toe. And so what will happen is they only have a seam here to finish, and sometimes maybe a seam here for the toe, but there's lots of ways to do a sew as you go to close up the toe. It's just so many different ways to knit socks. But the basic or basis, the base for knitting socks is what we did today. And that's it. You know, just decide if you want the heel and the toe on the same side or if you want it on opposite sides. Remember, if we do it on opposite sides, we're going to get a toe seam on the bottom of the sock. If we do it on the same side, the heel and toe, we're going to get a toe seam on the top of the sock. So first ask yourself, where do you want your toe seam? Bottom or top? Okay, we're always going to take it off on waste yarn if we're doing a top down sock, so that we can then Kitchener the toe close. But that's pretty much it. Now for the ankle or the leg, you can also do lace or Fair Isle or Tarja, because remember, when you're doing it flat, you've got a lot of options. Doing it flat means you've got that whole leg to work with to do any kind of patterns that you want before you have to start your foot. I wouldn't do patterning on the foot because it might irritate you inside of a shoe, but by all means, do your patterning up top. Tuck stitch. Just remember that if you do tuck stitch, it's going to make your fabric wider. So you may have to do some swatching to see what's going to work well with your ankle. But hey, if you like slouchy socks, who cares, right? So that's pretty much it. That's how I do my socks, or that's the basis for how I do socks, or how I learned to do socks anyway. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm sorry it's a little all over the place, but I just wanted to give you just a general overview of knitting socks on your knitting machine. Enjoy. Peace.